Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano. What is going on right now? Answer: the NBA Finals. So no better time than to have a person who wrote a book called How Basketball Can Save the World. His name is David Hollander. He also started a course at NYU back in 2019 with that same title. The book came out in February, and since then, obviously, he's been doing interviews on the content of this wonderful book, which relates the sport to our everyday culture and society and the principles associated with basketball. David Hollander is in his 15th year at NYU. He's an assistant dean of real world and clinical professor with the Preston Robert Tisch Institute for Global Sport. And yes, he's one of NYU's most popular professors. Through this interview, you will see why. Ladies and gentlemen, David Hollander.
I've always felt like basketball was a special language to me. It was a place where I went, a sanctuary where the world went away, and I felt peace, I felt balance, I felt my relations with others got right. It was a place where I could go and know no one. And immediately we found ways of knowing each other. And the thing is I knew so many people who go to this space for the same thing, the exact same feelings they had were the feelings I had. And as I saw the world breaking down in 2015, 2016, I thought to myself, could I apply this feeling that I have and so many others have, this language that I speak and so many others speak, that seemed like a model for a good world? Could I apply that to 21st century problems? And so I researched what basketball was intended to do, how it is operated in the world, what the world has told us it means. And I came up with principles, a philosophy, a structure, words for that language that is not necessarily a spoken language. And I built a course that became this book.
Perfect. Here's what you do so well in the book. You weave in the simplicity of basketball, but then you branch out to the complexities of our world, as you just said, and society, then bring it back to the simplicity of basketball. You beautifully deconstruct the simplicity of 1 second you're on offense and 1 second you're on defense. And then you use that for a metaphor going forward to describe the complexities of our world. You take it, because I'm doing it in an injustice. You make it the justice.
No, I really, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. Because, in a way, it is that simple. I feel like we've lost some of the basic things about humanity that go on a basketball court. Basketball is a small space compared to a lot of other sports. So it requires us to be together in close proximity and to see each other and to begin to kind of see each other in a way that says, all right, what are you thinking about me? What am I thinking about you? What do you need? What do I need? And that kind of continuous, immediate humanization of each other begins to get us past like all the preconceptions or misconceptions or whatever conceptions we have of each other, and we see each other. And just this kind of very basic, that's one thing, but very basic principle of cooperation. It's not like the trite kind of cooperation that they tell you in third grade. What I'm talking about is a space with a small amount of people where you're seeing each other, where the way you advance the ball is with another person passing, which was a revolutionary element of the game that Naismith created. And then you play no position. There is no specific thing that anyone cannot do, that anyone can do, that others cannot. There's no positions. You do whatever you need to do, whatever must be done as the facts and circumstances change on the ground. This positionlessness, well, it's exactly, it's the adventure of being alive. None of us are just one thing.
I love that. And so an example would be miss shot instantaneously. You're going into rebound defensive mode. And it's your a second ago you were on offense. And so that mindset shift is amazing. And it's so real about how we enter life, right? You know, in some minute you're this, and the next
Yeah.
minute you're that. And
Well,
the
Chris, I'll tell you,
agility. Yeah.
and you know, and then right. So it's like, so what does that mean for the 21st century? Well, that's the future of work. You know, so many of us uh, these days, I know that our college graduates will change their job, perhaps their entire field, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Entire fields will become obsolete. What's the mindset for a person trying to stand in the middle of a rapidly changing world, technologically, legally, politically, to adjust, to change to the facts and circumstances rapidly changing on the ground? It's not a mindset where you're like, okay, I got to step out of the batter's box and figure this out now. I got to go back to a huddle, call play. It's being in motion with other people, being able to stand in the middle of that change and think independently. And the way you learn to do that is by over and over again running the break, putting yourself in a change situation and collaboratively with other people, figuring out how to solve it.
And this is perfect for leadership. So one second you're in a strategy meeting, and then you have a crisis situation, and you
Right.
have to, that's exactly right what you're talking about, changing careers, how to
Yeah.
approach your professional life, and then also in real time in a leadership situation.
The, you know, you and I teach, and, you know, many people come to our programs and they're like, well, the end goal is to get a job. I'm like, listen, I hate to disappoint you. I hate to disappoint your parents. That's not what you're here for. That's not what I came here for. What we came here for is to give you the tools to locate your joy, to know exactly who you are. And when you're able to do that, well, man, you will become a powerful force in this world. You will be able to go where you need to go, to be the person you need to be. The leadership tool is not who has read the most MBA books or whatever, 12 highly successful habits of 12 highly successful. It's the people who can learn how to learn. That never stops. That's the skill of a lifetime. And it's a, you know, I claim, I try to show that this is the kind of thing you learn in motion on a basketball court.
And it's that joy. And I love that concept, you know, having the students find their joy through critical thinking and analysis and constant learning. I love that. Let's go back to the beginning, though. The sport of basketball in your life. How did it start? And can you explain to the viewers and listeners your love of that game?
Yeah, I mean, it started when my dad shocked my mom by taking their savings and dumping a bunch of black asphalt in our yard, flattening it out into a 15 by 15-foot court with a real 4 stanchion basket. And it was in that space, around 6 years old, I began to learn that language. I spoke it with my siblings, my friends, neighbors, kids I didn't even know coming around, you know, with my brother through his dyslexia. And he later became a professional basketball player. It's the language I spoke with my sister. The one we shared, same one we shared when we hustled those guys in Riverside Park. That was the language of myself, my own joy, my solitude of being by myself, with myself. It's a language that the old men in the playground spoke to me when they'd get off work. I was 12, and they treated me like an equal. So I learned to speak that language correctly. And wherever I've gone, all over the world, and I've been all over the United States and Shanghai, the Middle East, the Caribbean. I have looked for that space where people speak that language, and that to to this day, it's it's still that place. It's still that language.
So speaking of the language, the title of the book, How Basketball Can Save the World. You have a class that you teach on it. You've written the book. It was released in February of 2023. At what moment did you say, I am writing a book on my passion in
Yeah.
this message and the world needs to hear it?
Well, I'll tell you so we I launched the course in the summer of 2019. Um, you're right. The pandemic had not happened. I had built it and pitched it internally here. 2018, 2017. Like I said, around 2015, 2016 is when I was motivated to create this. And yeah, most people around here were like, yeah, you done some good work, Dave, but we're not doing that. That's not a course. That's not something. I said, no, I really can show it. Um, and um, and so they were like, well, you got to do a pilot in the summer. And I did. I did a pilot in the summer of 2019, and it was an undergraduate course. We had 28 students from 6 different programs, including a kid from Tulane who just heard about it and he had to be there. 28 students for an undergraduate non-required course, like a world record. And we went to the West 4th Street courts, and we went to the Milbank Dunleavy Center in Harlem. The NBA gave us VIP access to the NBA draft at Barclays Center that summer, like a suite. I mean, we had an incredible experience. But I'll tell you, just the mere mention of the course, even before the pilot ran, got international media attention. I mean, all of a sudden I was on CBS News. They're like, what do you mean? How can it save the world? AP ran a story that got picked up by 60 major outlets, Slam magazine. And then we taught the course and the pandemic hit. We taught the course in a regular semester. The pandemic hit right in the middle. And there it was, man. The world actually needed saving. The New York Times ran like a 1,500 word feature, which is very nice, on the course. And though I started thinking that this is a book, once an article in the New York Times runs, you get a lot of calls, and that accelerated the process.
Can you share, if I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you know your material, talk about that Google STEM and what they valued and how this all came about?
Yeah, and Google did 2 internal studies, one in 2013, one again in 2017, and they asked themselves, who are our best people, and what is it about them that makes them our best people? What are the traits and can we find any consistency across who our leaders are and why? And both times they did the study, they came up with 8 characteristics, 1 through 8. What are the most important things? The least important thing each time was their tech or STEM expertise. The thing that really made people the most powerful leaders at Google were the kinds of things, what people used to call soft skills, listening to other people, empathy, incorporating feedback, being able to hear another point of view, coaching. I point this out in the very first chapter called Cooperation, because what I'm trying to say is, on a basketball court, this kind of like really seeing each other up close and in a humanized way, that's a big deal. That's the stuff those are the skills leaders are made of. And it can't happen on Zoom. Chat GPT is not going to do this for you. You really have to be able to read another person. And the way you do that is by being with other people. And the greatest leaders are able to have those micro communications that only human beings can have in the presence of one another. We need, and I'm not saying, do away with remote work. I'm saying value the time we spend together because it builds so much culture and awareness of who we are to each other.
Beautifully into the Celtics. It's fascinating. And Doc Rivers, it was perfect timing. Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, all in 08, that one time they came together. It exemplifies exactly what you're talking about. I felt myself reliving that season. And I'm a big Doc Rivers fan, so I really enjoyed that. I bet you enjoyed telling that part of the story.
I'm so glad you seized on that. Not enough people do in interviews. I mean, that's it. I almost could have told that story and not written the rest of the book. Ubuntu is this ancient South African / Zulu based concept, which literally means I am because you are. What a beautiful way to walk this earth. I am because you are. In other words, I have no conception of who I am or what my purpose is, only to the extent that it connects with my community, with others, with you. I tell this so you relate the story about how Doc Rivers met one of the coaches from an organization called Hoops for Hope, which has incorporated Ubuntu into their curriculum. Ubuntu's, which been it's been quoted by so many great leaders, Obama, Desmond Tutu, but and they had it, and the Celtics used it. The original big three: Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce. Doc Rivers used it to build the right kind of understanding of each other. But my favorite story is of the older Celtic, the great Bill Russell. And this is totally random. I was waiting for a friend of mine in a car in Philadelphia, and I was listening to a radio station down there, and Sonny Hill asks Bill Russell around the time Shaquille O'Neal was unstoppable. He's the most dominant force in basketball. Nobody knew how to stop him. He was just so much physically superior to everyone else. They hack-a-shacked, and they said, Bill, Sonny Hill, also a Hall of Famer, asked Bill Russell, because Bill had stopped the Goliath of his day, Wilt Chamberlain, says, Bill, how would you stop Shaquille O'Neal? If anybody would know, Bill Russell would know. And there was maybe it was just a 3-second pause, but it felt like 10 seconds to me, where Russell didn't answer. I was like, what's going on? Russell's like, you know what? He's like, I wouldn't. And so he's like, what? What are you, Bill Russell? What are you, crazy? You wouldn't stop? You wouldn't know? He's like, no, I wouldn't. He goes, my team would. That's basketball. That's Russell. That's Ubuntu. You cannot. The reason Russell had to take a minute, because it didn't compute. He's like, wait a second, me stop, and he kept probably, he was so smart. He kept going through it in his head, and he's probably like, what am I talking about? He's like, this is the way this thing works, man. It's 5 of us. I don't participate in GOAT conversations because they make no sense to me. There's nothing. That's not what the game is. It's silly to talk about the game that way. So I love the concept of Ubuntu. I think it's like I have 13 principles, but it's like that should be one of them. It deserves its own book.
And then you talk about OKC, you talk about the Spurs, you go on to analyze, and you weave in and out of current day, per se. The Spurs are going to be good again at some point. But when you look, I love the story about Wilt Chamberlain and Mark Eaton. Could you share with folks at UCLA and just change the course of this guy's life?
Yeah, I didn't even know the story. I was down at a Retired Players Association retreat in New Orleans 10 years ago, and I interviewed Mark Eaton, and he tells me this story about how he almost wasn't going to make it in the NBA. He didn't really make it at UCLA, where he went to college. He was on the bench. His stats were going down and down, minutes, rebounds, nothing. And so he was hoping to get drafted after he graduated, and he's working out in this Bel Air gym where a lot of guys who were pro players or prospects were working out, and he was just getting dogged, man. he just chasing guys around. Guys were making fools out of him. He couldn't believe it. And the game, the pickup game, he was over, I guess, he's sitting on the side, panting. And all of a sudden he feels a hand on his shoulder. And it's Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt's like, hey, man. He's like, I've been watching you out there. And, you got skills. He's like, but you're doing this thing all wrong. He's like, don't go chasing around the little guys and trying to block their shots. He goes, you need to understand your job. Because your job is just stand right here in the middle and let them come to you. He goes, and then after they come to you and you stop them, then you run up court and you see what else you can do. He's like, and then repeat the process. He's like, that's the game for you, man. And he walks out, and Eaton was like, oh, that's the way I'm supposed to be. And Mark Eaton went on to become the career shot blocker in NBA history, defensive player of the year. I mean, he an all-star a few times. It changed his life. And the point of that story is that basketball is a game that intentionally tried to include as many athletic types. All the other games before that were about power and speed. Can I score by getting through you or past you? The goal is vertical, touchdown, hockey or soccer goal, even the base in baseball. It's about speed and power. This game elevated the goal, required accuracy and control, and began to include different kinds of abilities that could shine, which stands for a principle that there are all kinds of leadership archetypes, not just the handsome like you, Chris, or the charismatic or the loud. There's the doer, the quiet, the one like Eaton who originally thought he was supposed to just be running all over the place and like being involved in everything. And really, all he had to do to lead was a different kind of thing. Wasn't going to be Wilt Chamberlain. Wasn't going to be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Wasn't going to be, And so it's really important for us in the 21st century to have a more inclusive human resource management lens to recognize the different kinds of people who can make not just a difference in this world, but lead. That story to me has a lot to do with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
What have you learned since you started this and implemented that course to today? What is the number one takeaway that you've learned in this entire uncovering of this beautiful link between the sport you love and our lives, society?
Yeah. So small scale, large scale. Small scale is, it's a lot of people who've been waiting for this kind of intuited or known or felt feelings about basketball, attachment to basketball. They've appreciated so much that I've articulated it. I've given it words. But that's very gratifying. It's very great. It feels so good to bond with those who know. But what has been the greatest takeaway is how hungry people are for something else. How hungry people are for a different source of problem solving. You think about it, man. Who's been running the show for millennia? It's been the same kinds of leaders, monarchs, military types, religious types, politicians, lawyers, captains of industry, and they've come up with these same kinds of leaders for a millennia, schools of thought to help our world be more just, more productive, efficient. Isms, I call them: capitalism, socialism, communism, deism, theism, utilitarianism. And what exactly have these same kinds of leaders, these same kinds of schools of thought for a millennia, where has it gotten us? I feel like there's still so many unresolved, same issues. We're still talking about gender. We're still talking about race. We're still talking about inability to be a global world. We're still talking about like loneliness. Well, these are new things. I'm saying, isn't it time to look at something new? And wow, so many people like are ready for new language. And I don't know how much time we have left, but I don't know if you know the saint of basketball story. I'm reading in the New York Times last Christmas that there's a village in central Italy called Pareta Terme that has a church it's been around 15th century, has a shrine to basketball. People come from all over the country to pray at the shrine. Better season, better jump shot. Village is frustrated. They made petition to the Vatican to have their local Madonna be recognized as the first ever patron saint of basketball. They're not hearing back. I was like, Jesus, this is my class. Oh my God. I call my TA, who's Italian. He's working for NBC Sports. I'm like, Alessandro, you believe this? He's like, I know, I'm home in Bologna for Christmas. He goes and grabs the priest. The priest, the first guest in my first hour of how basketball saved the world 20. I'm like, Father, what can I do? He's like, I don't know. I say, class, no grade, first 15 minutes class. Everybody send me one sentence. Why does basketball deserve its own saint? I put it in this huge letter. I send it to the Pope. Somehow La Repubblica, like the New York Times of Italy, got a hold of it, publishes the letter in full. It becomes a huge story. And that was in March 2022. On Good Friday, April 12th, the Pope recognized the first ever patron saint of basketball.
What an awesome story.
Yeah, it's just, look, and that's the thing. It's like, that's, by the way, first team sport ever to get its own saint, not soccer, which is very popular in Italy. Why would the Pope do that? Yes, he said nice things about basketball in the past, but because he knows it's time for new currency. It's time for new ideas to do what we need to do. And so that was a spectacular thing that happened. We're very encouraged. This year, the class project is to get a UN resolution passed for World Basketball Day. So we're working on that.
I love that. Yes. There's days for everything else, right? Let's bring in hoops. Let's
do
it. Yes. Okay, let's conclude here. I'm going to do some all-star moments, rapid fire, okay?
Oh, I love this.
So as my former colleague used to say at the Jets, first thought, best thought. I love that. Okay, you ready? So don't lament. Just go, go, go. Here we go. How do you deal with adversity?
I organize my room.
How do you give yourself fuel?
I look at my daughter.
What does never give up mean to you?
It means wake up, show up.
What is the value of collaboration?
Something I need to appreciate more.
What is the ideal characteristic of a great student?
Openness and courage.
Lastly, describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
I believe dreams can come true.
I love that. David, this has been tremendous. This is absolutely tremendous. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for always being such a great, like all those questions I could have answered just your name. You are such a source of like positivity, motivation, of vision, of you personify the human adventure in a way that I only wish people could see as much as I see, up close as much as I've seen. So thank you for letting me share with you like you have.
Awesome, David. Thank you so much. That means a lot. We will see each other soon. Go have a great day, and let's shoot some hoops. I just love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
And we thank David very much for being on the show. And my number one takeaway is this, that none of us are just one thing. And David uses an example in his book about Magic Johnson playing all 5 positions to lead the Lakers over the Philadelphia 76ers in the 1980 NBA Finals, giving the Lakers their first championship in 12 years. And you just heard throughout our conversation the correlation between the principles of basketball and bettering society in our everyday lives. Fascinating premise and great conversation. And we appreciate David very much for coming on. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, I am Chris Gargano. Have a great week, everybody. If you can give us a like, a follow, a comment, we would appreciate it. We will see you next week on Keep the Line Moving.
We thank you for listening to Keep the Line Moving. We would love it if you subscribed or left a review. For more podcast episodes, check out our YouTube page. If you'd like to work with the Gargano Leadership Group, check out our website. This has been a GLG production, copyright 2023. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everyone.